recording here. First of all, thanks, Phil, for doing this. I know you're running a company and running an empire and building all kinds of cool stuff. So thanks for taking the time. I've always been a fan since I knew about you back in the Evernote days, early days of Evernote. And so it's a pleasure to get to talk with you. I've followed your various amusing videos through the journey and recommended it to a lot of people. And I'm very curious to hear about your workflow. That's kind of the motivation for this conversation. Someone who's creating new tools, we don't always get to see the behind the scenes. So if you would indulge us, what have you used today so far? So I don't know how much work you've had a chance to do or news reading or consumption or creativity so far today, but either today or maybe yesterday, if we want to dive back.
It's been a pretty busy day already, so quite a bit.
So
what did I use so far? Well, let's see. I'll tell you what I'm using right now. I think it's what I've been using most of the day. It's Figma, Slack, Fantastical. It's just on my Mac. I'm on a Mac here. It's my calendar thing of choice. Zoom. And a lot of our product. I haven't used Evernote today yet. I usually do at some point during the day, but it hasn't come up yet today. But day's still young.
So first thing I think people might want to see and might benefit from seeing is a little bit of I mean, they've hopefully watched the videos, etc. But maybe show us an example of something that you do in a meeting that adds to what you could do, just in a Zoom that might be useful for people to get a sense of what that's about.
Yeah, let me kind of switch over to maybe a different deck. So the main idea behind is just to make something that makes it easier to make an impression on video. Our 1 second pitch is instantly kind of big. I just want to make it easy for people to kind of make this compelling presence on video, whether you're presenting or just participating or just hanging out. It's a companion app, so it works with everything. And the two use cases are meetings and presentations. So if you want to, whether the presentation is live or recorded, so you can use this for kind of a live meeting, or you could record something with it to send, which is much better than sending a deck or something like that. And the idea is it's meant to help you not feel like like an anonymous head in a box, which we all kind of tend to feel like on video. In 30 seconds, the way it works is basically you pick your surroundings, your environment. We have your real background, or we have a few hundred other ones, kind of like this one today for some reason. But we have stuff that's all sorts of different styles. Some of them are kind of zany like this. Others are more useful. Last week, my favorite was this like little wood cabin. And then you've got slides. So originally we built this just to goof around, to show off pictures from Instagram, but you can also just make slides. We're thinking that the cognitive style of most presentations is wrong, because the emphasis is on the slides, and that's stupid. The emphasis should be on on you. So we make it really easy to make. Just type in slides, add images. These auto adjust. I'm not changing anything. All I'm doing is hitting next to go to different rooms, and the visual style will automatically change to kind of match the the room you're in, because we're trying to make this more humane method of communicating, where it's more about you than about the materials are back of you to support you, not in the foreground. But if you want to be old school and you want to use like Keynote or PowerPoint, you can just like you can import any kind of slide deck up there, and I can I don't have to ask the audience between looking at me and looking at my slides. I can shrink out of the way, so I can not be in the way, and I can point and explain things and go full screen. I can become a blue translucent Jedi ghost and fly around, and I can say I think this is the most important owl right now, that kind of stuff. That's the tip of the iceberg, but there's a lot of other stuff. I can do this simultaneously with multiple people. I can make interactive recordings to send around. The concept is you can communicate over video ridiculously better than you could in real life. And for whatever reason, we just haven't been doing that. We've been constraining ourselves to little boxes. And if we kind of break out of those boxes, it turns out you can do an amazing amount of more stuff.
Talk about the screen sharing for a second. One of the features you have is, you can share a screen that sort of gives you a little box that says share this. I think that's been a tricky point for some people with these meetings, is figuring out how to share screen and how to do that effectively. Is that is that something you find is helpful to do with mmhmm, or do you just do what you just did, where you're just basically showing your background?
It depends on what you're trying to do. So and what you're trying to do it in. So if you're going to pull up like a relatively heavyweight slide like this, right, and you can like maybe fade a little bit so you can like see behind it. But I really want people to be able to read like fine text. Then sharing the screen is going to give you, through Zoom, because that's the way Zoom works, it's going to give you a better better version of that. So you could do that if I'm presenting something, but I tend to actually what I've realized is actually like that style of presentation is often cognitively wrong, because it's emphasizing like, what is the point of like showing lots of little details? The point of a video call is to make this kind of personal connection. So more and more I've actually been simplifying the slides, putting them kind of behind me, and then and then talking. But yeah, but if you have to do something with fine detail, there's lots of it supports that in lots of ways.
One other thing I want to ask you about is about the slides themselves. There's this paradigm that seems to dominate in the slides world, where you create a deck, then you create an entirely new deck, then a new deck each time, as opposed to this idea that you have like your photo album. You have just your photos and you pick whichever photos you want to share from your entire album. Do you, with mmhmm, though, as of now, right, you still create kind of a separate session, right, for each endeavor, as opposed to having kind of a set of slides that you then pick from like a playlist. How do you see that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the behavior is really evolving. So what I've done is I've got a bunch of tabs open in mmhmm, because I'm in it all day long. And some of those, like if I have a particular high value meeting that I needed to prepare for, then I'll make a tab for that, and I'll arrange the slides and backgrounds and everything the way I want them, so I can just like hit the next button and go through it. But I've also got several that are just more for general conversations. They kind of show that the types of things that I'm kind of frequently doing, reactions, GIFs, that kind of stuff. We just added a Giphy integration, so you can I can just hit the make a new slide, say Giphy slide, and type in a search result, and then just it pops up Giphies or whatever kind of right in there. So it's really easy for kind of casual responses like this, but you can also use it for if you need to plan ahead. There's a lot of things that are like for casual meetings. If I'm not presenting, if I'm just participating, like if we're doing this for all hands, which we still do with Zoom, although that's about to change. And everyone is in a little box. Whoever's on the main stage is presenting, but everyone else is just sitting in the box. But we can do stuff like we have gesture detection. So for example, if I make like an emoji heart with my hands, it like does this, or you can do a thumbs up or a thumbs down. And this stuff is meant to just be like really easy to make these casual reactions, where even if you're just in a small little box, you can still make an impression, you can still stand out. So you can kind of quickly get a read for what people are thinking that way.
You mentioned moving beyond Zoom. Are you switching, or is that something you're building to stand apart from Zoom?
I think Zoom is great for some things and less great for other things. I don't think it's particularly good for what we're doing now, which is I don't know how many people are watching, but there's a bunch of people in the audience, and then there's like a smaller number of people that are on stage. It's not really ideal for that. And, most people have their cameras on, so what's the point? So I think there's a significantly better UI that you can do for kind of few to many meetings, like all hands, and that's stuff that we're experimenting with heavily right now. I think we've got some pretty great solutions for that.
Interesting.
So it could be for more interactive stuff. We have I think Zoom is great for that. I'm on Zoom probably. I think I average 13 Zoom meetings a day. So
yeah,
power user.
Yeah, we've been experimenting with a variety of different tools. Run the World is one we've liked, because you can have these one-on-one breakouts where you get to actually talk to people individually. We've used around.co, which kind of gives you back the screen real estate. and AirMeet, which allows you to do a few different kinds of setups. So I feel like there's some experimentation. There's one called Butter, or it used to be Meet Butter, which has built-in notes. Around has built-in notes too. That to me is a function that it is core to any meeting, as people are taking notes and sharing ideas. It's hard to do that in a chat that's just streaming and that disappears. Is that stuff? So that's stuff that you feel you could continue building on?
So I think it's important, I think, for us to, like, we're very clear about what we are and what we aren't. We aren't a communication tool. We're not there to collaborate. We're not like where your team gathers to do work. We have no interest in competing in that space. There's a lot of great products out there. We're a performance tool. So we help you perform better on video, which is something that almost all of us have to do multiple times a day, right? Everyone's got these like micro performances, sometimes not very micro, where you're like, okay, tension on me, I'm going to do a bit. And, and sometimes you're doing that for your kids, and sometimes you're doing that for your investors, and sometimes you're doing that for your team or your customers or whatever. Almost all of us are performers. Nike used to have this slogan. I remember Nike's slogan used to be, everyone's an athlete. I was always like, I am not an athlete. But like, everyone is a performer, especially now more than ever with us being on video so much. So is there to help you perform, to be more engaging, more effective. And so we're meant to sit on top of whatever tools you want to use that you're using for that performance. So for something like an all hands, where it's me and then I'm giving an update once a week to the company, and then I bring other people on stage, like that has to be a performance. Otherwise you're literally, it's just boring otherwise, right? Because you're wasting everyone's time. So for those kinds of things, I think it's like spot on in our, like, we are laser focused on that. For things like a design review, where a bunch of us are sitting in a meeting looking at sitting on Zoom looking at Figma, great, those are great tools, and let's keep doing that. So like, we're not productivity. My last company was productivity. We're very much not productivity. We're performance.
Yeah, if I can ask you about that, the Evernote thing, there's been a lot of ups and downs at Evernote since then. I don't want to get into all that, but what I do want to ask you about is the sort of new note-taking generation, right? So there's Roam. A lot of people are using Notion. There's a variety of Obsidian. There's a variety of new tools that have emerged that use either bidirectional linking or allow you to organize notes in different ways from this kind of structured individual note paradigm that Evernote really pioneered, or at least moved forward significantly. What's your feeling about that? I mean, you still use Evernote. I know it's your baby, but do you see it? Do you see the kind of note-taking world moving in new ways?
Yeah, it's I think there's a lot of interesting stuff going on in the note-taking world with Roam and Notion and stuff like that. And we've used a few of those things at kind of various companies that I've been at after Evernote. I kind of made it a policy not to standardize on using Evernote for every company I've been in after, because I didn't want to be the tech support for everyone. So I was like, I'm going to use Evernote. You guys figure out whatever you want to do. Just, don't make me have to be tech support for the entire company using it, which is what would happen if we were all using Evernote. So we use a bunch of different things. None of them have like caught my, like, none of them have been as magical to me as using Evernote. So I'm still using Evernote every day. But more importantly, I think like, the thing that made Evernote really powerful, I think, or the thing that made us successful, but also our biggest weakness, was that we were an intensely personal thing, right? Evernote was really about your notes. And as soon as we tried to cross into a collaborative thing, a team-based thing, it actually turned out to be a totally different thing. In fact, like, the last thing you want to see is how somebody else has set up their like Evernote notebook. Like, we made it so easy to customize how you've set things up to like mirror the folds in your own brain so that they just feel like natural. But like, no one else wants to see that. No one wants to see how somebody else has like organized like important stuff. So I think for me, it's really bifurcated into stuff that's for me, that I use to be productive, that like everyone else sees the output of it, but they don't get to see like how I've like wired it and set it up, and they shouldn't, and they would be horrified if they did. And then the stuff that we all see together, and like Figma is like, to me, the ultimate example of that second category, which is like everything in Figma is kind of out in the open, and we're using it, and I live at Figma for the collaborative stuff. It's amazing. The fact that there's nowhere to hide is kind of a big feature of it. So I'm personally haven't found a use for some of this new generation of note taking that are trying to be more fundamentally about like multiplayer. But I'm glad to see that the industry is evolving, and obviously
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of productivity in general.
I mean, for Rome, I think if I could just push a little further on that one. I mean, for Rome, I see it as not so much that it's multiplayer, it's that it's bi-directional linking, and it's the unit is the bullet point as opposed to the note. So you can have one note that has multiple, sits in multiple different places. Obviously you can use tags in Evernote that way, but
I mean, you can do, all of this is a cult, right? Like everyone, there's going to be these movements of like, back in the day, it was David Allen and GTD stuff.
Yep.
And then there's like something else, and then there's something else, and like I just don't care. I just I lost interest in the cults of like, oh, this is the one true way of like organizing it.
Sure.
If anything, I've started to appreciate that with the profound wisdom that comes with forgetting things. I'm much more chill about this whole thing, and I don't have we kind of realized this at Evernote, that there was a group of people who fetishize organization, the act of organization. Mm-hmm. These people derive pleasure from putting labels on things, putting everything in little boxes. Like, there's nothing wrong with that as far as fetishes go. It's a relatively benign one. But there's like people who derive pleasure from the act of organizing. Those people aren't actually any more productive or organized than everyone else. They just that's their hobby. That's what they're into. And that's great. And we had a lot of those people at Evernote. I was never one of those people. I'm kind of a messy person. I don't actually get a lot of pleasure from organizing things. I think I pretend that I have like a well-organized mind, whatever that means, but no one can tell. So, it's easy to pretend that. But that group of people who enjoy the act of organization is like definitely no more than 5% of the population, which is a big number, and they really like it. And so it's always possible to start a new thing that caters to that group and get some section of them to peel off and say, well, we used to do it with tags in Evernote, but now we're going to do it in Rome in like some other way, because like it's entertainment. Like to them, that's the same as like to me playing video games. It's like they just love fiddling with organizational stuff. More power to them. 95% of the rest of us don't enjoy that. We just want the results. We just want to be like well put together and organized and effective. And like if we've made a decision at Evernote pretty early on that we're going after that mainstream market. We're not going after the hardcore organizational fetishist. And I think that's the right decision. But there's a bunch of tools on the other side, and those other tools are like there's going to be a lot of churn. They're going to have very fast growth, and then hit a limit pretty fast because like the adoption rate of that 5% is very high because they all talk to each other.
Yeah.
They all have like the same podcasts they listen to.
Yeah.
And so like, yeah, they're going to get fast growth, fast adoption, but they're going to have a hard time breaking out past that 5% of the population.
Yeah. Let's talk about mobile tools for a minute. You mentioned Figma and a variety of other kind of desktop things that you use. These days, a lot of us are at our computers, so we're not needing to use mobile stuff as much. But at least during the pandemic, what's been your kind of go-to? Do you have some apps that you rely on mobile, either for leisure, creativity, or for work?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't left the house very much in the past year. I'm looking forward very much to leaving the basement, blinking into the sunlight. And then I'll be using all sorts of mobile stuff. If you had told me in 2019, I would have never made a company that makes a native desktop Mac product and like not a mobile product first. I would have been like, that's crazy. This is 2019. What are you thinking? But turned out that 2020 was a perfectly good year to do that. I think maybe 2021 is not going to be a good year to do that anymore. So I think like mobile is going to become much more important again towards the second half of this year as people start kind of coming out. And so we're putting a lot of emphasis on mobile, on the mobile versions, which will be coming out kind of in that second half of the year, hopefully, just in time as people actually start living lives on mobile again. I've like, the only stuff I do with my phone at this point is, I play video games on it. I surf the web. I check email. I do Slack. I do kind of all the stuff when I'm not standing at my desk. But it's because I'm like sitting on the couch, so it isn't nearly as big a difference as it used to be in 2019 and before. But I think it will return to that. And I think like we had this like renaissance of desktop tools again. And we'll see how it. I think the desktop will still stay important because I think more and more people will be working distributed. They'll still have laptops and desktops kind of wherever they are, but mobile will get reintroduced.
What's your video game of choice? You mentioned a video game on the phone, if you don't mind sharing.
I'm not proud of this. I've lately become addicted on my iPhone to Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes, which is a stupid game, but it reminds me, when I was a kid, I never had enough money to buy all the Star Wars action figures. Like, I'm the age where all I wanted in life was Star Wars action figures, and I can only buy like 2 of them or something. And it reminds me, it gives me that same satisfaction of like collecting the stupid action figures I never had as a kid, and like pretending that they're fighting each other. So yeah, it's a deeply embarrassing thing. But Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes is what I was playing. I think I already put in like 15 minutes into it today. The day's just starting.
What's your news diet like? Media diet?
I'm lying. It was like 45 minutes. It was a total lie.
I'm sure everyone here has their time wasters or things they play with to enjoy time. Is no one's unique in that. What's your media diet like? What tools do you use for that? We have a lot of journalists here, and journalists are always interested in what people use for news and how do you access news and what apps or sites do you rely
on? So I mean, I'm old. So like I watch cable TV. I have like, I basically, I TiVo like all of the major cable news shows, and I just
Really?
fast forward through them. Yeah.
Wow.
And I know, like no one does that, but I do.
Including
I
Fox,
to,
CNN and Fox and MSNBC?
I've stopped with Fox. I used to. Just because like I used to do MSNBC and Fox and CNN, and then I like dropped out of CNN because like just became like low quality. Like it wasn't even left or right. It was just like, it just seemed weird. But now I've kind of added that back to the rotation. I've dropped the Fox stuff. That's, I don't know. It was like somehow less interesting now. I've started CNBC. I started watching Shep Smith on CNBC, like on TiVo. I don't know why, but that seems okay. I listen to a lot of stuff on audio just as I'm like moving around the house. So I have Alexas everywhere. Great. I'm just going to trigger it. So I'll listen to NPR, BBC, like the flash briefing, like constantly. They update a few times a day, and then online, yeah, I'm just reading things. New York Times, Washington Post. I look at Slate. I look at Vox. I look at the CNN website. I have a collection. I have a notebook in Evernote called Haiku, which is like just a collection of screenshots of just like ridiculous CNN headlines to post together. So that's always entertaining. And then a bunch of like Hacker News, a bunch of the more technical stuff, and then whatever people wind up surfacing on our Slack channels. I never read news from Facebook or Twitter. I just don't use social media that way. But I do read, like people will post stories on the internal Slack about various things that are allegedly relevant to us, and so I'll read those mostly on desktop. I don't do that much on the phone. I read, and then I've started doing a bunch of Substack. And started following some people. So Casey Newton, I think was the first person that I subscribed to on Substack. Platformer. Yeah, it's really good. So I read Platformer, and then I've got a few other email digests that I get that way.
What about podcasts? You used to do that Evernote podcasts. Which ones do you listen to?
So I go through phases of binge, like listening to podcasts. I'm not a regular listener to any podcasts, but I go through phases of like, binging on, particular ones. We used to do our own podcast at Evernote and at Old Turtles. So, we'll probably start that up again at some point. So the ones I listen to are the ones that make it into my Alexa feed. So like the daily, that kind of stuff. And I don't even like, but I don't even know what they like. I don't perceive them as being like specific things. It's just like, oh yeah, that's the stuff that Alexa plays to me when they say, hey, what's new? And so like I like right now there's a Washington Post podcast that's in rotation. I didn't put it there. It was just there, and I listen to it as I'm showering. I've got an Alexa sitting that's loud enough that I can hear in the shower. And it's today it was, I think it was some Washington Post journalist podcast and the normal flash briefing, which I should probably curate. Like it's important to know I should probably curate, but I don't know. I kind of find as I get older, I kind of find myself like enjoying more. Like I like the luxury of not making decisions. It's kind of cool. I kind of like the Omakase. I miss going to Japan. I used to go to Japan all the time, but the best thing is, the omakase culture. Like, you walk into a sushi restaurant, a decent sushi restaurant in Japan, you don't order, because why the hell would you presume that you know better what you would enjoy eating today than the master, than the sushi chef? So it's omakase and omakase, and they have in your hands, and they take care of you. And it's kind of insulting to order, because by ordering, you're kind of telling the sushi chef that, like, you trust your own opinion about what to eat more than his.
Yeah.
You're not the one that's trained for 40 years to do this.
Yeah.
So I kind of like that. I kind of like that concept. So I'm trying to lead more of an omakase lifestyle.
I think a lot of that's happening in journalism in terms of curation playing more of a role. I mean, museums, we don't expect to tell the museum what to show or what we want to look at. We look at what they've curated for us in that way too. There are a few questions in the chat I want to get to in a minute. We have just about 10 minutes left with you. And thanks again for taking the time, Phil. One question I have though, following up, you mentioned Slack. There's a new book by Cal Newport called A World Without Email. He talks about the hive mind and how crazy email is. We're looking at it every 6 seconds, and it's distracting and preventing us from working in deep ways. You get a lot done. You've worked on a lot of different products. I'm assuming you've been able to retain deep focus. So how do you balance all the messages that are coming across through Slack and email with the need to work deeply? What's your system or workflow for that?
I ignore my email. I barely ever touch email. I've got, let's see what it's up to. I'm a very bad person. 140,000 unread messages. So email, I suck at email. I'm terrible at email. I gave up on email like 10 years ago. First thing I gave up on was voicemail. Like something like 15 years ago, I left a voicemail. I changed my voicemail message. This is the last time I ever changed my voicemail message, about 15 years ago, and I changed it to say, "Hey, you've reached Phil. I don't check voicemail, so do not leave me a message here." That's it. And then that was like, oh my God, what a life hack. And I've never checked voicemail since then in 15 years. And no one checks voicemail now, but that used to be a thing that you used to have to do. And I was like, amazing. I don't have to do it. I don't care what's there. And I've never quite been that explicit about email, but I'm close to it. And I basically look at email when someone yells at me about me having missed an important email. I ask people to text me if they want to send me something and they need me to see it, like, please text me and then I'll do it. So like I use email as like a search place. Like I go and search through emails for previous information. So I still interact with email, but it is not like your inbox is it is literally the dumbest possible way to organize an information feed. It's like, it's all of the stuff that other people want you to see that you don't want to see, literally sorted in the wrong order. Like, it's crazy. It is an amazing thing that we even allow email to exist. So I've more or less given up on that. I suck on email. I apologize to people listening to this if you've sent me emails, and I haven't ignored it. I just probably haven't seen it. But I do still use it as a search, as a search thing. Slack is like worse in some ways, better in others, but also not, very much not perfect. But in terms of like keeping focus, I mean, I try to find, a few hours every day where I'm just like, I just block it off. Like calendar to me is a much more useful tool than like email or Slack. Like the calendar is a major thing. And so like having like, I kind of do what the calendar tells me to do. And so like, I spend a lot more time like customizing how I want my calendar to work. And I have an assistant who's great, Leah, who like helps me with that stuff. And I make sure there's time every day that I just like focus on things, and then I just focus on them.
Is that Google Calendar? And you said Fantastical, I think you said?
Fantastic. Yeah. I mean, on the Mac, I'm using Fantastical. I don't know why Apple, like the Apple Calendar apps, just like they're just like, they don't do the most basic things, and I'm not sure why Apple can't get around to making a decent calendar. But because I'm Apple on just about everything else. But yeah, Fantastical is good. It lets me join a Zoom link by, like just clicking on it, which even that the Apple Calendar doesn't do. So it's nice. It's nice and customizable. I use that a lot. But focus is really about it's really about attitude more than anything else. Like it's not a tool is not going to give you focus. You just have to like, I mean, one way to think about it is ultimately it's only about working on important stuff. And so if I'm ever working on something that I feel like isn't important, then I haven't done my job correctly, right?
What's your pie? The pie of your part. Sorry to interrupt you. What's the pie of your time look like? The pie of your time. In other words, what percent on what percent on future product? What percent on 80-20 kind of percent dreaming, imagining, experimenting?
I've got a lot of like 90% slices. I think it probably adds up to something like 720%. There's a lot of stuff that feels that way. I work so. I wake up. Usually like the morning, a few hours is the only time that I can like work on stuff uninterrupted. So I try not to schedule any meetings or any discussions with anyone until 10 a.m. just so that I could have like 3-ish hours, 2 to 3 hours to like do some stuff myself, like some individual contributor stuff, which is like important to keep me sane. If all I do is just like direct other people, I feel like I haven't done any work. I know that's real work. I know actually management is really hard. I need to get better at it. But like my brain doesn't register sitting in a meeting or telling other people what to do as work. And so for me to like not get depressed and feel like that I'm actually doing something, I have to do stuff myself. I have to like write something. I have to like do something. So I do that in the morning. And then after that, it's all, it's 13, 14, 15 kind of back-to-back discussions. We've recently done a thing that's been amazing, which is we use mmhmm a lot, obviously. We're building it for us. And we stopped doing update meetings. So we no longer have meetings where like people are updating each other about stuff. Like you do an update meeting, you do what I did. You show some slides, you talk, you record yourself doing it, you send it around. And then excuse me, I watch interactive recordings from people on my team. And the interactive recordings is something you can make in mmhmm, where basically I can send it to you. It's a video, but you also have the slides and you can watch it like a movie, or you can like skip around and look at the slides. So it's like a deck and a video, put together. And I can watch those at double speed. So like I'm getting through them at twice the time because I can listen and see much faster than you can speak. So it's stupid to like for you to update me synchronously. And that's just like everyone can do that. So that saves about literally 50% of the time. So we don't do synchronous update meetings. All of the updates are asynchronous, and then the only thing we do synchronously is the discussion, which makes me look forward to meetings because there are no boring parts of meetings anymore. Because like you're never just sitting there while someone is like updating. And B, we're saving several hours a day that way. So that's been a massive thing. We started doing that just about a month ago, and that's been massive. But in terms of my own time, yeah, it's 90% mmhmm, 90% Old Turtles, 90% Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes, 90% like 20 other things. It's well over 100% is what it feels like. And I have no idea how to like segment it finer than that.
I'm curious about your hobbies, but we're going to run out of time here. I want to ask 2 questions from people in the chat. One from Howard Lake. Will you be adding closed captions, live closed captions as a function, or do you just assume that will work in Zoom and Teams, etc.?
Yeah, we are adding closed captions and a bunch of stuff. We have a bunch of new versions, new releases coming out. We have some major stuff happening.
Yeah, recently the GIFs and the slides have been huge. Recently, a big jump from my perspective, just as a user, and as
we're gonna melt people's brains in the next few months. We've got like when we come out with the 2.0 version, we're on 1.4 right now. We're gonna come out with 2.0 pretty soon. It's like it's life-changing. Like I've been using it myself, and I can't imagine. I had this moment at Evernote where in 2008. I'll do this really fast. So in 2008. I did something. I like scanned some document from my car on my Mac. And then 2 weeks later, I was at the DMV and I needed to get it. And I left it at home. And I was like, crap. And then I realized, I'm like, wait, I've got my iPhone and I've got Evernote. And this is what we built it for. I should just be able to pull it up on Evernote. And I like took the phone out and there it was. And it was the first time that I'd like used that like in the wild, like for real, where like I made a note on my computer. I didn't do anything else. And here it was 2 weeks later when I needed it on my phone. And it sounds trivial right now, but that hadn't happened before in my life. And so I used it and I had that feeling that like, okay, everything before today was the past. Mm-hmm. Like this is now different. I will now see the world through eyes that know that automatic synchronization in Evernote is part of the world. And like everything changes from that on. And I knew that we were onto something major. And I know it's hard to like, it doesn't sound like a big deal because now you can literally do that everywhere, but it was a big deal in early 2008. I've had the same experiences a couple of times now using some of the new stuff that we're coming out with. So like I'm optimistic that we're doing something as fundamental as syncing was back in 2008.
That's exciting. Rodney Gibbs asks, are you seeing K through 12 teachers adopting mmhmm? He's saying as a parent, he's been sort of struggling seeing some of the stuff that would give Nancy Duarte a heart attack, as he puts it?
Yeah, we've seen a lot of adoption in K-12, both for teachers and students. Lots of really beautiful use cases. We're leaning into that. Premium is free for all education use up until at least early part of next year, and then we have to kind of figure it out. But it's free for teachers, it's free for students, and our philosophy is in all of this stuff. Our philosophy is what we call better than real life. So we call it IRL plus. We're trying to make things. Doing it on video isn't almost as good as doing it in person, because almost as good is really hard to achieve. It's ridiculously better than. So we think that there are segments of education that you can do and be ridiculously more effective on video if you do it correctly than you could ever do in person. Like when I teach a class, mercifully not catered to, sometimes I like lecture some college classes. If I teach a class, I am much better. I am much more effective video because like I have all sorts of things that I can't do live. So like this idea of IRL plus, what kind of experiences can we make in healthcare, in education, in sales, in everything, that you will be much better using our products over video than you could have been in person. That's easier to achieve than with something like Zoom and a few other companies try to do, which is they're like, well, it's never going to be as good on video than in person, but let's like try to make it almost as good. Like that almost as good is like dreadful and quite difficult.
I think that's it. I want to respect your time. We're out of time. It's been very interesting to hear from your perspective. Thanks for taking the time to do this.
Thank you, Jeremy. It was really, really great.
Any final words? Any other kind of tools that people should know about that they may not, or a secret favorite that you have that's something you like to use and you find particularly useful or fun?
I mean, I really think the biggest change for me as a CEO, surprisingly, has been Figma, and adopting this as a fully distributed company. What I've realized is like now we do all sorts of meetings on Figma, and we've got all sorts of conventions about like moving little dots around and voting and doing stuff. And I noticed that I'm getting a lot more productivity out of people who I think before were just like a little bit shy, and so like an in-person meeting with me, like I guess I tended to just like dominate some of those meetings, which is fine for people who are used to that. And they kind of, they want to interrupt me and tell me to shut up and they have a better idea, and that's great. But it turns out there's a bunch of people who aren't comfortable telling the CEO to shut up. And those people are actually oftentimes really brilliant, and like setting up in Figma this way that like everyone can kind of see what you're working on, but do it much more democratically. Like it's just been shocking the amount of extra productivity I've gotten from people that frankly I never knew were that good. It just turns out that like I was the problem because in the in-person synchronous conversation, I was shutting them down.
That's great. That's a good tip. Thank you. Thanks, Phil. So have a great rest of your day. Thanks for joining us. And thanks everyone for taking part in this conversation, even if just to watch. That's great.
Take care.
Have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.